Hi friends, Alex Kai's here, and this is a home in Seattle. The term mid-century modern gets name dropped a lot these days. You can see it everywhere from IKEA to the Museum of Modern Art. But it's that mid-century part that gets oft forgotten. Now, I was an art history major for about 2 weeks in college, but it was long enough to fall in love with everything art and design. And I carried that love into real estate, so I thought I would take you along on a tour of some of the mid-century modern homes in Seattle. To set the stage, here's a little modern music. The modernist period is considered usually to be from about 1900 to the mid-20th century, and essentially it's a rejection of the status quo. Of course, modernism eventually becomes the status quo, which is why we get postmodernism, and artists move away from their academy's dogmatic notions of subject matter, perspective, and traditional notions of beauty, and instead focus on things more like form, shape, color, and line. American architect Louis Sullivan coins the phrase, "form follows function," which is the idea that the way something looks should be determined by its purpose. Sullivan's often called the father of the American skyscraper. During his lifetime, steel became more affordable and mass-produced, and it allowed architects to design buildings that weren't relying on these massive load-bearing walls, but instead could be tall and slender and reach to the sky. Now, Sullivan had an apprentice, someone you may have heard of, Frank Lloyd Wright. And Wright very much valued form and the efficiency of these mass-produced materials. But he was also heavily influenced by nature and his studies in Japan. At the turn of the century, he was the ringleader of what's known as the Prairie School of Architecture. Like Sullivan, these architects used mass-produced materials to create residential spaces featuring these big open floor plans, wide low roofs, and a horizontal orientation. Wright felt that structures should look as if they naturally grew from the site, so these prairie buildings echo the wide, flat expanses of the Midwest where Wright was working. Between 1900 and 1910, Wright built something around 50 of these prairie homes. So all this sets the stage for this mid-century modern revolution in art and architecture. Let's go to the library to look at some picture books. So the library's closed except for curbside pickup, so I'm gonna go grab some books. Let's go. It's interesting to me that the modern movement has such roots in the Midwest, because I've always associated it with California. Well, it turns out there's a reason for that, and that reason is real estate developer Joseph Eichler. Eichler lived in a Wright home in California, and he was inspired by this modern design. With the end of World War II and the returning of so many soldiers, there became a huge need for housing, and Eichler was there to fill that need. He's largely responsible for bringing over these design elements from these large modern homes and huge corporate developments and making it available to the general public. Eichler built subdivisions throughout California in a style that would become known as mid-century modern. Between 1949 and 1966, he built 11,000 of these homes in partnership with various architects. I was also interested to learn that Eichler was a big proponent of fair housing and was one of the first large tract builders to sell to minorities. He even resigned from the National Association of Home Builders in protest to discriminatory policies. So, for the first time, instead of opting for 2- or 3-story homes full of small rooms built on small lots in the city, Americans were instead moving to the suburbs and getting these larger homes built on larger pieces of land. These homes were relatively sprawling, open concept homes built on a single level. Still pretty small by today's standards, though. Side note, did you know that since the beginning of the 20th century, American homes have increased in size by about 74%? All of this growth mindset, along with Frank Lloyd Wright's innovative prairie homes, the boom of the space age, and a desire to reconvene with nature, helped spread and influence this mid-century modern movement. Here's some other famous modern homes. One of the central tenets of these Eichler subdivisions was to build them simply and keep them priced competitively. But design elements were equally important, a stark difference from the earlier post-colonial revival. Eichler exteriors feature flat or low-sloping roofs, vertical wood siding, and clean geometric lines. One of Eichler's ideals was to bring the outside in. Does this remind you of anyone? He achieves this with lots of glass, skylights, floor-to-ceiling windows, and atriums. It's interesting to note that these homes feature few, if any, front-facing windows. If there are, they're placed up really high, have frosted glass, and they're pretty small. And this is done to really emphasize the value and importance of family life and the private interior domestic space at the time. The innovative style of these homes made a statement, for sure, but they weren't these grand structures meant to show off the owner's wealth. The use of wood and other simple natural materials, the understated street facades, and the human scale of the buildings made them places to inhabit and to live. These aren't the massive, iconic Wright homes that we so often think are emblematic of modern architecture. Instead, these are family homes that represent a simple and functional way of living. I think the mid-century modern design is the perfect fit for a Seattle lifestyle. These houses flow a little bit more like how we live today. Less formal, more organic, more comfortable. And the beauty of this 70-year-old design is that they're fairly easy to remodel. It doesn't take much to update a classic mid-century modern house into a really nice contemporary space. They already have nice open concept living spaces. The windows are big and bright, and mechanical systems are fairly easy to access and to update. So where are all the mid-century modern homes in Seattle? Well, they started going up after people started moving out from the downtown core, places like Magnolia, Blue Ridge, and Wedgwood. And we're here in Shoreline at a nice example of a mid-century modern house. This one's priced at just over $1 million, and it's a great example of open concept living, high ceilings, natural materials, clean modern lines, and that unassuming front with a low-pitched roof and big open windows in the back. Oh, thanks for joining me today. And if you're thinking about making a home in Seattle, send me a message. Bye.